duration, or if you are happy to be part of the recording that will be shared on our website and our YouTube channel, do feel free to take your video off when asking a question later on. So welcome again to the fourth Digital Research Infrastructure webinar. So this series is designed to showcase digital research infrastructure projects and communities in the UK and beyond. This is to show state-of-the-art initiatives that aim to advance research tools and techniques, foster collaboration, data sharing, and accelerate the discoveries across a range of academic disciplines and sectors. So just a bit about us before we get into the webinar itself. So we're the Digital Curation Centre hosting you today. We're an internationally recognised centre of expertise in digital curation, research data management and open science based in Scotland. We were established in 2004 with a mission to help organisations worldwide make the best use of data in and for research, development and operations in all contexts, academic, industrial, governmental and more. So our team provide expert advice and practical assistance in storing, managing, protecting and sharing digital data and obtaining the best value from it. Our services, you can see from the screen displayed, our DMP Online data management platform. We host an annual conference this year, earlier in February, going to Zagreb, Croatia. We recently announced that we'll be hosting the conference in Lisbon in Portugal next year. So do check out our website for more information on that. Our call for submissions were open yesterday as well. We also have a International Journal of Digital Curation, our IJDC journal, as well as services in training and consultancy as well. Just before I hand over to Nicky today from the Archaeology Data Service, just like to start by asking our participants where they're coming from and a bit about you. It's going to set the context for our discussion today. So starting with what country are you calling in from today? So I'll just pop in the QR code. So if you do have a mobile device, you're welcome to scan the QR code. If you prefer to use your laptop, you simply need to type wooclap.com into your browser and enter the event code UEQRDU. And from there, you'll be able to complete the first part of the webinar. And just before we start the Q&A, if you could ensure you're muted as well, please, too. Okay, we've got our first respondent from the UK. I'll just see. So just before we get started, we're going to be using wooclap. So on your device, simply type in wooclap.com or scan the QR code on your screen now, entering the event code UEQRDU into your browser. The QR code should let you go past this. We're just asking you a couple of questions before we hand over to our the presentation about the Archaeology Data Service from Dr. Nicky Garland, the Training and Communications Manager for the ADS service. It's possible we have a number of people from the UK today, so yeah, do let us know where you are calling in from. Always good to know a range of countries often represented at these webinars as well. So yeah, do feel free to put in those details as well. Just thinking of time, I'm just moving on to what is your job title? So again, this wooclap quiz can be accessed via mobile phone or your browser. So to access this, simply pick up your mobile device and scan the QR code. That'll take you to wooclap.com, where you'll simply need to enter the QR code, UEQRDU, that's the event code, I should say. And then you'll be able to enter your job title. Before we get into the final question, before I hand over to Dr. Nicky today, who'll be presenting on the ADS, the Archaeology Data Service. Perfect. So research and data are always very well represented. So research data specialist, a data migrations lead, a data manager, an open research officer. Good to see familiar job titles, especially from the Digital Curation Centre perspective as well. These are colleagues we work with regularly as well. So glad to see you being represented in our audience today as well. So again, just on to Woo Clap just before we get started with Dr. Nicky's presentation today. So at this point, I'll just move us on to our final question before we hand over. So finally, let's find out how familiar you are with the Archaeology Data Service, or the ADS. Always have a bit of a, so far, variety in these answers. So does tend to move towards the little bit not at all. But certainly there's a question at the end, which we'll see where you're at with this journey of knowing who you're watching today and learning about. So for those of you who joined after my introduction, we are going to be having a presentation from Dr. Nicky Garland. So he's the Training and Communications Manager of the Archaeology Data Service. After that, we'll be opening up for a Q&A. Do feel free to put your questions in the chat throughout his presentation, or hold on to them and simply raise your hand, and at the end of his presentation we'll come to you individually and we can go through those and have a good discussion on what you've learned today and any questions you have throughout the presentation as well. Do feel free to jot them down. If we do run out of time and there's a load of questions that remain unanswered, Nicky's happy to send a response afterwards. So we will collate all of those questions, send them on to Nicky, and then we will go through those and send you the responses via email as well. Okay, well, at this point, I think it's time for me to hand over. So I'll just stop sharing my screen. I'll hand over to Dr. Nicky Garland, the Training and Communications Manager from the Archaeology Data Service.
Thank you, Al. Let me just share my screen with you all. Okay. Hopefully you can see my screen. Got
Yes,
some nods? Okay,
we can see your screen. Perfect.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much for coming today, and thank you very much to Al and Agnes and everybody at the DCC for inviting me, but also for all of their organisation for this webinar series. I've been to a few of them now. I think they've been fantastic. So hopefully this will be a nice contribution as well. So as Al mentioned, my name is Nicky Garland. I'm the Training and Communications Manager at the Archaeology Data Service. We are based at the University of York. So my talk today is going to give you kind of a thorough rundown of what we do at the ADS, how our infrastructure works, what kind of collections we hold, what kind of data we hold as well. And so I'd start with just a brief overview, an introduction, cover a little bit about who we are and our mission, and a little bit about our history as well, before I dive into the technical side of things. So the Archaeology Data Service, quite commonly known as the ADS, just add to the acronyms that tend to follow the digital infrastructure realm. We were founded back in 1996. In fact, autumn this year will be our 30th anniversary. And we are hosted in the Department of Archaeology at the University of York. We're seen as the UK's leading accredited digital repository for archaeology and historic environment data. We have a number of accreditations that are related to our role as a digital repository, including a Core Trust Seal accreditation and the National Archives accreditation as well, which we accomplished a couple of years ago, and we were the first digital archive in the UK to accomplish that. Our collections come from UK-based projects, and they come from both commercial archaeology projects, industry, but also research projects in higher education. I'd say they're predominantly from UK-based projects, because we do hold some collections from outside the UK as well, usually those affiliated with a UK-based researcher. We're always encouraging people to deposit their archives in the most appropriate place. Sometimes that doesn't exist in various other locations, so they do deposit with us. For example, we hold a number of archives from the British Academy, British International Research Institutes. So yeah, we focus on the UK, but we do have something that we have some data sets that fall outside that range as well. So I wanted to start for the kind of rationale for a dedicated repository for archaeology. And this comes down to the nature of the discipline itself, which is essentially that the investigation of the past via archaeology is a destructive process. We investigate the Earth's surface, we excavate into the ground, into features and deposits, and retrieve artifacts which tell us more about our past. And as a discipline, therefore, one of the core kind of tenets to what we do is that we try to preserve that record as much as possible. So that feeds into kind of the moral and legal obligations that we hold as archaeologists. And therefore, preservation of these materials is really, really important. But also the accessibility of these materials is really important, so that we're not just investigating the past, but we're allowing others to learn from that investigation and undertake their own research and into those remains as well. Now, we found in archaeology, particularly in the last 20 years, much of the data that we collect is now born digital as well. And way back when I started in archaeology about 25 years ago now, everything was written on paper and drawn, and now much of that recording is done digitally via tablets or GPS devices and using photogrammetry and other 3D laser scanning techniques. And as such, much of the data that is created, or much of the digital digital record that's created, is increasing in number, particularly in the last 10 to 15 years. And therefore, a repository such as the ADS is really necessary to hold that data, to preserve it, and to make it more accessible to others. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about our history, and this gives you an indication of the changes at the ADS in inception in the 1990s. You can see how our interface has changed over the years from the 1990s to the 2010s to how it is now, and the underlying infrastructure to that has evolved during that period of time as well. And what started as something fairly basic has grown into quite a sophisticated, interconnected web of digital infrastructure, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, but has now had to serve hundreds of thousands of users every year rather than hundreds of users way back when we started. And the collections that we hold has grown to kind of match that. So we hold a vast array of datasets and collections that reflect the archaeology and the broader historic environment sector and heritage sector as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those collections as well today. But I wanted to give you a very brief history of the ADS to see how things have changed within kind of digital infrastructure as it's gone along. As I mentioned, we were founded in the 1990s as part of the Arts and Humanities Data Service, which some may remember if they've been part of this sphere for a long period of time. And our original remit was focusing more on research projects based in universities, those funded by the UKRI and the British Academy and Leverhulme Trust, which we still facilitate today. But as the commercial archaeology sector grew, particularly in the late 90s and the early 2000s, we started to take more and more data from what we call developer-led archaeology. This is archaeological investigation ahead of development across the UK, houses and other infrastructure as part of the planning process, and kind of by which I mean the environmental assessments that are undertaken before development in the UK. And that came in real handy because in the early 2000s, our AHRC funding was withdrawn, and we were granted transitional funding to allow us to become more self-sufficient. And thankfully, the early investment in a funding model for the commercial sector allowed us to become self-sufficient by the early 2010s and grow and thrive. And it's at that point we were able to really draw in and expand our focus on digital preservation and get some of the accreditations that we're known for today, including Core Trust Seal and also the Data Seal of Approval, and really be kind of leaders in the UK for that. We were one of the first organizations, any organizations, to achieve these types of accreditations. Thankfully, in 2021, about 5 years ago now, AHRC resumed funding to the ADS as well as a number of other organizations as part of the Digital Infrastructure Initiative, or IDA. And from that last 5 year period, we've been able to grow our number and complete and diversify what we've been able to do. So it's been real central to our most recent developments. The ADS today, the core mission is still the long-term preservation of data that remains central to everything that we do. But now we can do more with that data. We are an open access repository, so we share all of our data sets as open access resources, hopefully to support research and innovation in the heritage sector. But now we participate quite widely in a number of European research projects, which I'll talk about in a second. And we're seen as a recommended repository for other funding bodies, particularly the UKRI. And it's been able that funding and just the growth of the ADS more generally has allowed us to have an active research, outreach, and training program, which is where much of my own work sits, and to broaden our reach beyond just one part of the sector. Before we go any further, I always want to share a slide of the people who make the ADS work. We have a relatively small team, there's around 30 to 35 of us now. And digital infrastructure can sometimes be seen as a website or as just a single server sitting somewhere in a warehouse. But actually, it's really the people behind it that really make this infrastructure work. And we have a specialist team, many of whom are archaeologists in training, or by training. They were field archaeologists, much like myself. But we've also drawn in other specialisms, including data managers and software developers and archivists as well. And this has allowed us to have expertise in digital preservation, but also specifically in archaeological and other types of heritage data, which I think makes us better at what we do and the sector that we serve. So, excuse me, I've just skipped through a bunch of slides. So yeah, just wanted to highlight some of the smiling faces at the ADS there. They're not all of our number. It's grown a little bit since that photo was taken, but they're the people who make everything work. I wanted to talk a little bit about our business model as well. As I mentioned, we did lean in the early 2000s to serve the commercial archaeology sector, and that forms quite a large proportion of the finances that we bring in, and including in that is large-scale infrastructure projects, including High Speed 2, which many of you may be familiar with, which means that we're able to sustain these kind of long-term contracts, which help us to have sustainable practices as part of our preservation. But as I mentioned, we also draw in core funding from the UKRI as part of the IDA initiative, and we are also part of a number of consortiums that have been successful in applying for European Commission funding, to the point where AHRC has highlighted us as part of our role in international collaboration and securing funding from Europe as well. So if you scan that QR code, you can find out a little bit more about our research team who have been instrumental there. As I mentioned, our core activity is digital preservation, and as such, our funding model feeds into an endowment fund which sustains our core activities, those core preservation activities, to ensure that if one or multiple of these pillars of our business model were to go away or to reduce dramatically, we'd still have the funds to continue to do our core activities, and that forms part of those accreditations for being a digital preservation organization. In terms of those European research projects, we have been instrumental in setting up European research infrastructure collaborations, including the Ariadne research infrastructure, which focuses on archaeology and heritage from across Europe. But currently, we're also part of the Atrium project, which looks at digital infrastructure across arts and humanities organizations, including DARIA and Clarin and Operas. And we are also contributing to the development of the European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage. My role there is to help develop training resources for people who are using the cloud and that fit within our sector as well. And this has been really instrumental because it allows us to develop new activities and facilities within our existing collections to make them more robust research resources as well. So the images on the right here relate to a couple of our existing collections, including the one that's called the CVMI, which is essentially a collection of stained glass images of stained glass windows from across the UK in ecclesiastical establishments. And through our presence in the Atrium project, we've been able to embed IIIF viewers into that collection to allow people to annotate and analyze and undertake further research on those collections. It's just a slide that we like to share to show our impact, particularly in the last 5 years with our RIDA funding, and it just shows what we've been able to do in the last 5 years in terms of preserving data, but also creating new partnerships and collaborations, training new user base, and the amount of downloads and page views that we've seen in that aspect. So we really have been able to grow over the last 5 years, in part due to IDA funding and in part due to other funding, which I'll talk about at the end of this presentation. So that's kind of a broad introduction to what we do and who we are, but I wanted to provide a little bit more detail about our digital infrastructure and to look under the bonnet a little bit and talk about how that works. So what I tried to do was to schematically show the system, the pipeline of the ADS of how data comes in, how we organize that data, and how it's made accessible to our user base. So in terms of data in, how we draw data in, we have a number of different avenues. That includes a system called Oasis, which is our system for receiving grey literature reports, mainly from the commercial sector. For those unfamiliar with the term, grey literature relates to reports that are written by organizations for planning purposes, but aren't necessarily published in a kind of commercial publication. And this was a big issue in archaeology 15, 20 years ago, where the only way you could access these reports was either via the organizations that created them or going to a physical archive within a county in the UK and accessing a physical copy. And I do remember those days of having to go and do that. Nowadays, thankfully, we ingest digital versions of each of those reports, and we make them available for the archaeology sector more generally under Creative Commons licenses, so that they can use them as part of their research. We also have ingest deposit systems. So this is drawing data sets into the ADS, and the first of those was ADS Easy, which was created 12 years ago now, and has been replaced, or is being replaced, by a new system which we actually launched last week called Ingest, which I'll talk about in a second as well. And this is the facility for people to be able to deposit their data sets with us as collections for digital preservation. In terms of the archive itself, each of those input methods feed into our collections management and object management systems, which sit on top of our file storage and management systems, and then lead into our backup infrastructure. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then finally, on the right-hand side, we have our data out, how people access our data. We have a bespoke data catalog, but you can also access each of the collections via their individual archive interfaces. And we have a number of web services as well that people can access that data for. So Ingest, as I mentioned, was launched last week. It's been designed to be kind of an intuitive self-deposit interface to allow people to go through the process of inputting their collection level metadata and uploading their files alongside all of the metadata that's required. And the idea being is it's a system which is so ubiquitous, it could be used by a commercial operation or a large-scale research project, and it will suit each as well. And it will also suit our new initiatives which fit for heritage science, which I'll talk a little bit more later on. It has an automated checking procedure as well, so it highlights any errors that come through the system as the depositor is inputting their files, so that we can kind of try and minimize the error checking afterwards and streamline things for our archivists, which hopefully saves time for both the depositor and for us as well. We, recognizing that our archiving system is complicated, we wanted to create a version of it as an open educational resource. So you can actually download a PDF from this DOI, and it goes through step by step all of the archiving processes that we undertake and why we undertake them in a kind of plain language version for those who aren't familiar with all the necessary techniques that form part of the digital preservation system, and we follow an OAIS model, which is one of the reasons we wanted to create a plain language version so people can actually say it. But yeah, we do have a training portal, and if you're interested in the specifics of our workflow, you can download this document and find out more. This is what the schematic looks like, hence the need for a plain language version. Essentially, our data archive is ingested into our CMS and OMS, as I mentioned. We use a combination of different systems and multiple backup layers to make this information available. And we have a CMS interface which can be accessed from our archivist on the back end, and then feeds into our external systems. I should mention we also have an off-site backup, and this is for disaster management purposes to ensure that the data that we hold is kept for the long term. As part of this aspect, we have to publish all of the policies and procedures that we follow in the ADS in order to receive our archive accreditation, and you can download copies of those via our website. Very technical documents, but it does follow the entire process from start to finish. Thinking of the data route, the accessible side of things, this is undertaken via kind of two main interfaces that our users regularly use. The first one being the ADS library for browsing our kind of written collections. So these are open access publications, but also that grey literature resource I mentioned earlier. You can search by series, but also by author or by organization as well. And each collection has its own full landing page with metadata, downloads where available. In some instances, it's only a metadata record, but in many cases, it is a full download and an open access resource that people can use. And we, yeah, as I mentioned, we have open access licenses wherever possible. We also link, particularly on the author side of things, to personal persistent identifiers, including org IDs, and via Wikidata as well. So that search mechanism by author is particularly powerful and allows us to draw all these resources together. Our secondary interface is our data catalog. This was launched last year and is actually based on the design of another portal called the Ariadne portal. I mentioned Ariadne early on when we're talking about our European projects. Ariadne is a central point of access for archaeological resources from across Europe. It's an aggregating portal, and it draws all the data into itself. So we decided to create a version for ourselves because the infrastructure of Ariadne is that to reflect the archaeology and heritage sector, particularly in terms of how you search the data sets. So you can search by geographical location, by where. You can also search by when. This covers the time period of the archaeological or heritage asset, so the Roman period or the Saxon period. And also you can cover the what, which is the nature of the information itself. What type of monument, what type of artifact is it? Using control vocabularies, which actually link into Getty Art and Architecture Thesaurus. So using these different facets, you can search by one, but you can also search by all, which makes it a really kind of powerful tool to create very targeted searches, a really powerful research tool for people to understand the collections that we hold. It's also useful because it's an aggregating portal in its own right, but for UK-based data. So we draw together data sets from heritage organisations from across the UK, including Historic England, Historic Environment Scotland, CADU in Wales, and the Portable Antiquity Scheme, as well as a number of others. And so this portal and the data it holds is the largest consolidation of heritage data that has been created for the UK and the Isle of Man. So it's a really useful resource, and we continue to develop and improve it for our user base. We also make our metadata available for other aggregating platforms via OAI MPH. This means our collections are discoverable not through just our own interfaces, but through other aggregators, including Ariadne, as I mentioned. But we hold quite a diverse collection of information. So we also feed in to MEDIN, the Marine Environment Data and Information Network, for our marine resources, which I'll talk about in a moment. And also we have a huge array of scientific information as well from archaeological science activities. So we feed into other elements like the NERC as well. So it ensures that metadata, that open metadata, is part of the wider research landscape for others to be able to find our resources. I'm now just going to walk you through some of the kinds of collections that we hold. Archaeology is unique in terms of the breadth of data that we tend to collect. It's an archive, or our archive has grown considerably over the years, but it's become more diverse in the last 10 and 20 years as well, which puts us in a unique position in terms of the type of collections we hold, but also the type of data types that we allow to be ingested and that we could preserve. Just to give an overview, though, each of our collections has a kind of standardized homepage, I should say. So it means that our user base are familiar with each collection when they come into contact with it. And essentially that homepage includes our core metadata, as well as contextual information on the introduction and overview pages, a place to download the data, obviously, including the metadata that goes alongside with it. And in some instances, special features, special interfaces, such as a bespoke search platform, or maybe a map interface as well. And I'll show you some examples of these in a second. We also track usage statistics for how many people have viewed our pages or downloaded, which kind of demonstrates the value of this open data to depositors, but also to funders. So in terms of the type of collections we hold, this is quite diverse. And from early in the history of the ADS, we have been ingesting what we call national collections. So these are large-scale national data sets of heritage data, which were kind of initially deposited with us due to kind of project level funding, specific funding for different projects. And the example I've shown here is actually one of our most popular collections, which is the Defence of Britain database, which records architecture from World War II, including pillboxes, as you can see here, and other standing infrastructure. And this was really important in the early days of the ADS because it allowed us to forge partnerships with a variety of different organizations, in this instance, Historic England. And those partnerships continue today, and we continue to host data for from HE, but we also continue to work alongside them to improve the infrastructure for access to heritage as well. As I mentioned, we draw in a lot of data from the commercial archaeology sector. This is archaeological investigation ahead of development. And we estimate at least that around 90% of the collections we hold are from this sector. So that's just showing you how much data is produced and hopefully how much of it we've been able to capture, particularly in the last 10 years. Previous to the existence of the ADS, much of this data was kept in local organizations or was just lost entirely. So we've fundamentally changed how people can access archaeological data, including grey literature data as well, to ensure that the wider archaeology and heritage sector can benefit. We also hold data about historic buildings. These are detailed records ahead of development again, or due to buildings being at risk, and they could be recorded as part of the planning process. And these type of surveys include, photographic surveys, measured drawings, but increasingly also 3D data, 3D scans, photogrammetry data as well. And these could be deposited by a whole host of organizations and people, including just singular architects working on their own, but also large units as well. As I mentioned earlier, we take a lot of maritime data as well. There's a huge corpus of heritage data from along the UK coastline, but also in the intertidal zone as well. So we're seeing that as we see more development of particularly of things like offshore wind farms, we're seeing that submerged landscapes in and around the UK are being investigated as well. And so we have a huge data set there, which is, as I mentioned, has fed into other networks such as MEDIN, but we were also part of a project not too long ago called Unpathed Waters, which saw us to develop a portal to draw in marine data from lots of different resources, including many of the organizations I've already mentioned, like HE and HES. We also continue to take research project data. So these are UKRI and other funders funding research projects, which are usually undertaken in universities. And these are probably our most diverse range of collections, as you might imagine. They reflect the research projects that are being compiled. And therefore, each of the interfaces alongside of these are slightly more bespoke than our regular collections. So they might include interactive maps or other search interfaces. And here's an example of a collection of rock art data from northern England and Britain. And this is just one example that's found in Northumberland. And we've been able to embed IIIF viewers into these collections. And that's just one kind of example of how maybe some of these research projects have created these more bespoke interfaces. I also wanted to mention infrastructure projects because obviously they have a vast impact on the archaeological sector and some of the information that we draw. We have been working with High Speed 2 for a number of years now and drawing in information there, but we also collect data from a number of road schemes, other railway schemes like High Speed 1, for example, and pipeline data as well. And High Speed 2 is a really good example just because of the scale of the investigation that was undertaken by archaeologists, which saw a huge swathe of investigation across the country and was undertaken by a number of different commercial organizations. And so it really was a challenge, I think, to draw all the data together and organize it and manage it into a series of collections. And I should say that this is an ongoing process, but so far, we have about 360 different collections, which just make up this one infrastructure project. And that the variety of data that we have is massive. So, we talk about rail infrastructure, prehistoric sites, Roman burial sites, everything that you could think of, it falls under that collection. And it also has additional special interfaces, including a search and a map interface as well. Here's just an example of our collection level data. This is the one that we host for High Speed 2, so I wanted to include it here. So this appears on every single collection that we have. It follows established standards, including Dublin Core and standards set out by the Getty Research Institute. And we ensure during the deposition process to make sure that this metadata is complete and as accurate as possible. So this is just part of the metadata that we collect, but it just gives you an idea of how useful that could be when aggregated into other platforms as well. Just want to finish by talking a little bit about data types, just because, as I mentioned, the variety and the diversity of the data types that we hold. And in terms of quantity, we have a huge collection of records, fieldwork reports, and of these kind of these collection level digital archives as well. But that translates into a huge variety of different data types, which for archaeology could include 3D data or computer-assisted design or geographic information system or laser scanning. But as we move into more the heritage science sector, which I'll talk about in a second, that is expanding again to include elements that we never would have thought of just focusing on archaeology, including things like paint samples, for example. And if you look at the statistics from our last annual report, which was September of last year, this is looking at all of the data that we hold, which is around 94 terabytes and more than 3 million different files. But I think the big one that I point out here is the file formats. So we hold 645 different file formats to suit all of the diversity that we are currently ingesting, and that feeds the need of the heritage sector. So here's just a very brief schematic of some of the data types that we hold, and I wanted to just outline briefly what some of those are. Our most core element, the most numerous, I would say, is structured data. So this is spreadsheets and databases. And we see in archaeology this being there to support publications and grey literature. But as separate files, that makes it so much more useful for other researchers to reuse. We have a huge library of still images, digital photographs of fieldwork, artifacts, but also these fantastic historic photographs as well, which people have digitized and given to us. This is one from Old Windsor. It's from an excavation in the 1950s. And we also have a number of, as I mentioned already, kind of specialist image databases, including the Stained Glass Archive and the Rock Archive. Grey literature forms a massive element of what we do. I've already mentioned this, so I won't go into too much detail here. But one of our most fastest growing categories is 3D models. And this includes models from a variety of approaches, including LiDAR, photogrammetry, laser scanning, and others. And they feed into all sorts of different heritage methodologies, including fieldwork projects. So people are recording archaeological excavations using photogrammetry all the time now, but it was also, as I've already mentioned, historic buildings as well. And what we try to do is provide the raw data as well as the 3D model, so people can reconstruct if they so wish to as part of their research. But also we embed a viewer into our collections. It's called 3D Hop. And this is an example on the right-hand side here to allow people to look at the models before they take them away to reuse for their own purposes. And this is from a project called Tracing the Past, which looked at English medieval vaulted ceilings, a number of which are from ecclesiastical buildings, including St. Paul's as well, and the York Minster. So there's a fantastic array of 3D models there. Finally, spatial data. This is really important because of the vast amount of data that is collected by archaeologists. This could be data in terms of geographic location, but also geophysical survey. And this is, if you're not familiar, a non-intrusive survey technique that allows archaeologists to see under the surface of the ground to see whether or not there may be some archaeology present. This is an example from High Speed 2, which shows a possible settlement, but also just mapping archaeological sites and features during excavation as well. I should mention that we also include a huge, every single collection has a geographic location associated with it. So even if it's not a core element of that collection, then it does form part of what we do. I just have a couple more slides now, and I'm going to use those to kind of introduce kind of a more recent initiative in the last 18 months, which is the Heritage Science Data Service. So this is a newer initiative that builds on the infrastructure and the team at the ADS, and has been funded by the AHRC Riches program, which is for research infrastructure for conservation and heritage science. And it's really there to unlock the potential for heritage science and conservation data for both research and innovation. And this is very much watch this space. We're developing many of these things as we go throughout the project, but it will include a trusted fair repository, which is built on the ADS infrastructure, as well as virtual research environments for analyzing data, a data catalog for drawing together all of the heritage science data in one place, and as well as a catalog for research facilities and reference collections as well. I wanted to mention this because the link between the ADS and the HSDS, just to add another acronym to this group of acronyms, is close, and it's also quite intentional as well. We share the architecture and the people, but we've also drawn in a wider consortium of specialists from across the UK as well, including the British Museum and the National Gallery, among many others as well. So although this is linking everything together, it's using a lot of the infrastructure and the knowledge that we've been able to build up over the last 30 years, and will hopefully see us into the future as well. So just want to say thank you very much for listening. I hope you've learned something about the ADS and what we do. Please visit our website if you'd like to find out more. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and this is my email address if you wish to get in touch with me in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicky. This was great, very interesting. I'm sure our audience has questions. If you prefer, put them in the chat. I can read them out, or raise your hand, unmute, and you're welcome to ask the question yourself. And if not, I have some questions as well, but I will wait. Any questions from the audience? All right, well, then I will go first. So you mentioned research, outreach, and training, and this is the area of ADS that you are leading. Can you tell us more? What types of events, what types of audiences? Do they come to you and ask for the topic, or do you propose a topic and then bring them in? I'm just curious.
No, that's great. It's a lot of different things, really. It's sometimes we're approached to provide training for organizations. So we provide training, for example, for the British Academy, the BRIs that I mentioned at the beginning. This is the British International Research Institutes, and they want to learn more about digital infrastructure and how it works. So we've done a huge array of different training for them now, from data management all the way through to linked open data, for example, kind of utilizing a lot of our experts. But we've also gone around a number of, as part of our IDA funding, gone around university departments in the UK and tried to encourage researchers to adopt some of these practices and to deposit data with a trusted repository. That doesn't necessarily have to be us, but trying to give them the skills to facilitate that. So it's a huge variety. We're trying to do more and more with it and try and open up a little bit more as well. And we're also, you know, our user base is quite wide, so we're always trying to do new events and try and reach into new audiences. At the moment, we're looking at some of our collections and trying to figure out where we could expand into. So we're looking at things like historic building specialists, for example, will be at if anybody's a historic building specialist, will be at the IHBC conference in Newcastle in a couple of months' time, and trying to offer our services, but also just the data that we hold and encourage people to reuse it.
Okay, that's great. Yes, and intersections with commercial archaeology and the commercial partners are also fascinating. But I saw a question from one of our participants. So let me just navigate to that. Okay, so Amber asks, what is the ADS approach to meeting fair data principles?
So we take the fair data principles pretty seriously, and on our website you can find all of the fair data principles linked there, and we break down each point by point to ensure that we are adhering to all of the fair data principles in terms of our archives. On a more general level, that's the kind of quality of the metadata that we are collecting, and we also try to link into existing standards and controlled vocabularies, including Dublin Core, for example, and the Getty Art and Architecture thesaurus is really important to us. There are more specialized thesauri, including FISH is one for the Forum of Information and Standards of Heritage, just to add another acronym to the list. So we really try to link into the sector and to draw all that information from the sector. But I think probably the most important one, particularly for me in terms of training and outreach, is all of our resources are open access resources, and they're all licensed usually with a Creative Commons license or an open government license. So we try to encourage people to reuse our data as much as possible. And much of what I've been doing over the last few years is to encourage that reuse, is to demonstrate the value of these data sets, but also to show how they can be used in a number of different ways and the different value that they may hold. Particularly for things like commercial data sets where people are might struggle with how is this going to be very useful to me. But I mean, the research potential of much of this information is massive, and so yeah, we take that very seriously, and we're part of a number of initiatives that try and draw fair more into what we do.
Any other questions from the audience? If not, I have one more question, but I want to make sure that everyone has a chance. Okay, so my question is about the European level research projects that ADS is a participant in. And specifically, you mentioned infrastructure collaborations.
Yes.
So you mentioned Ariadne and Medin. I'm really curious if you could tell us a little bit more about these collaborations.
Sure, yeah. I think the most significant ones that we're part of right now is probably the Atrium project, and I'll try and drop the website into the chat as well. And this is really trying to facilitate cross research between these digital infrastructures. So the four organizations that are involved are DRI, Ariadne for archaeology, Clarion for language technologies, and Operus for open scholarly communications. And the idea being is we're trying to show how or demonstrate how these data sets from different organizations can be used together and incorporated with one another. So there's a lot of different facets to the project. I think it's fascinating, and it's a great group of people to work with. I specifically lead on a project which a part of it, which might be of interest to our speakers, our participants today, which is on transnational access. So I administer our transnational access scheme, which gives researchers the ability to travel to other organizations across Europe and undertake research with them on a short-term basis, 1 to 4 weeks usually, or to take part in summer schools, training schools. And it's a fully funded scheme. The only requirement is that you're moving transnationally, so you can't apply for schemes in the country that you currently work in. But it's a great opportunity to I've benefited from schemes like this myself in previous projects to facilitate connections with these people in different organizations. So it's been a real fascinating project, and I think it's still running for another couple of years, thankfully. So I'd look out for the Atrium project. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And we could have probably another 1 hour long or longer session just about it.
Sorry,
so we may get back to you to learn more. I think I will hand it over back to Al, who has a final poll for our audience, and then we could wrap up.
Thanks, Agnes. Thanks, Nicky. Excellent presentation. And it was recorded. So for any colleagues that weren't able to be here, we'll be sharing a link to that presentation after the event is finished. So as we got to the end of our WooClap poll on how familiar you are with ADS, you might be able to guess. The next question being, do you have a better understanding of the ADS and the services they offer now? Always good to ask that question. We'll just go through quickly to see where you're at now. So always good to see yeses throughout. It's what we tend to see from these webinars, which is always good, especially as our speakers still here. So we always do like to see that. So just giving you another 30 seconds or so to complete that if you're able to. Again, using the QR code on the screen now, or typing in wooclap.com and then entering the event code UEQRDU to join the WooClap and just tell us if you are more familiar and have a better understanding with the ADS and the work they do there as well. Once we're finished with this poll, I'll tell you a bit about the next webinar that we have, which is getting to know Jasmine and CEDA, more acronyms for you, which I think we can all agree that there's a number of those. So if you would like to know what they stand for, do join us next time. I'll explain a bit about the two organizations in a moment. So in fact, given the time, I will do that now. WooClap will remain open, so do feel free to let us know if you have a better understanding, as I'm sure you do from Nicky's excellent presentation. So yes, so the next webinar, number 5 in the series, is on the 10th of June. We've got more to announce happening the following week, and 2 in July that we're just working out the final details. So this webinar on the 10th of June is getting to know Jasmine and the Centre for Environmental Data Analysis, CEDA, with guest speakers Dr. Matt Pritchard and Alison Pammett. So Jasmine, operated by the Science and Technology Facilities Council on behalf of the Natural Environment Research Council. Jasmine is the UK's leading data analysis platform for environmental science. CEDA, the Centre for Environmental Data Analysis, serves the environmental science community by the provision of data centres, data analysis and access, research project and participation. It is one of 5 data centres that together comprise the NERC Environmental Data Service. And if you did enjoy the webinar today, do feel free, apologies, to follow us across social media channels. So we're live on Twitter, X, or LinkedIn or Blue Sky. We'll be announcing more in the series about the digital research infrastructures, our International Digital Curation Conference, IDCC, being hosted in Portugal, Lisbon next year. And do hear from more great speakers as well. So at this point, I will say a huge thank you to Nicky for joining us today. Thanks again. We wouldn't be able to host this webinar series without great guest speakers coming along. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to Agnes for hosting the Q&A and asking some excellent questions, and for all of you for joining us today. We'll be sending through the slides as well as the recording. So if you do have any other questions for us at DCC, for Nicky, do let me know and I can pass those on as long as they're Nicky's details. So thank you again for joining us on our first Microsoft Teams event as well. So again, have a good rest of your day and we look forward to seeing you soon.